Hello and welcome to this week's video message. I'm Emily here. Before we begin what my topic is, I would love it if you could please click or tap subscribe to my YouTube channel. I really appreciate it. Share this video far and wide. It'll also be in the video vault on theliteracynest.com. All right, so I'm going to be talking about a topic that I get a lot of questions about, and I can't believe I haven't done this video before. It's like, wow, I really should. So I've finally gotten around to it, and that is the subject of progression charts. So in Orton-Gillingham, we are given a suggested order of lessons that we refer to in the OG world as a progression chart. There are OG-based programs that may offer what is called a scope and sequence in OG training through whether it be Orton-Gillingham Academy or IMSLEC, so forth. They're going to provide more of a suggested order rather than a locked scope and sequence. And they will refer to that as a progression chart. And I'll explain why, what it is, and things like that, and the benefits and so forth. So, first of all, a progression chart is just a list of skills and concepts that you're going to follow with a student in a suggested order based on what your Orton-Gillingham trainers have provided for you. So, for instance, I have one I keep in this little sleeve here. I keep it handy, although I've practically memorized it by heart by now, that I have had for many, many years, starting from my very beginning of Orton-Gillingham training. And this is an order that I have for my students that is, once again, I want to stress, suggested. It may not be lockstep for every student. When I first assess them, I am going to be looking for certain things that they have already mastered or need more assistance with and get my starting point. Once I really look at their areas of strength and of need, then I will refer to this progression chart and pick out in a particular level the starting point where I should begin with that student. So if I'm seeing, for instance, that a student may have mastered all of their short vowel sounds, but they really are mixing up maybe the H digraphs like CH and SH, something like that. What I may do as a suggested starting point with a student that may be brand new is I may start off with giving like just a basic overview lesson just to review all the short vowel sounds so I can clear all of that up and then swiftly move into those H digraphs and really focus in on bringing those to mastery. I may not start right away with those digraphs at the very beginning with a brand new student. And the reason being is with the first few lessons, you're trying to build a rapport and relationship with this student and get them really, really secure in the routines and order of the lesson. And so may want to start with something very simple at first that builds up their confidence and helps them understand the structure and predictability of the lesson before moving into something brand new. That's a little bit off topic, but it is certainly connected to what we're talking about right now. So a progression chart is not exactly that scope and sequence, because with the scope and sequence, you're going to see that that order is pretty much locked in. That is what programs are going to offer you. But with the progression chart, we have flexibility. I'll talk more about that as I get down to point number 4. The benefits of that is because there's flexibility, then I don't follow a particular program, then I can choose where my starting point is for that child and really, really focus in on getting them to mastery right away and very swiftly. So the progression is designed, once again, to offer a suggested way or order to work with a student, but it doesn't necessarily have to be lockstep. So, for instance, for every single student you may be servicing, they may not always go in that particular order, but it may be a close follow. It really depends child to child. The third point I want to make is that the suggested order in a progression chart is not universal. And what do I mean by that? That means there are a lot of different training organizations for OG out there. And each one of them has their own suggested progression chart that they would like their trainees and educators to follow. There is no one universal progression chart that all of these organizations follow. I often get questioned about that in the resources that I create because maybe they're not 100% locked into a particular OG-based program or a particular training organization. And there appears to be honest, a little bit of confusion about that, I find, with newly trained OG people. These folks tend to think that everybody follows the same progression. Everybody has the same chart. Everybody has the same scope and sequence. OG is OG everywhere. And that's just not the case. So that's why I say the suggested order of your progression chart is not universal across every single training organization. There will be differences. Perfect example with me, my progression that I follow came from out of the Mass General Hospital OG training curriculum. And I've been following that for a very long time. But as a member of Orton-Gillingham Academy, their progression is a little bit different than the one that I had been following for many years. I can see the benefits of both orders. They're both very, very similar. There are some things that I like more about one than another. I think it's important to note this, that yes, there's no universal suggested order, and there's also no perfect progression chart out there. We can try to get really close, but you know what? This is at the heart of it, is about the child in front of you. Okay. The next one is a progression chart should still be nurturing the principles of being both prescriptive and diagnostic and prescriptive. We can use those interchangeably. So because we don't have a locked in scope and sequence, we can use this suggested order and we can make adjustments as needed for that child or that adult that we're working with. This is especially important if you're working with an older student who may not have to go through at a slower pace some of the lower level skills. Maybe they just need an overview of some of the basic syllable types and division and be ready to move on at a swifter pace through the progression as they reach into other levels. So that is the beauty of being able to look at your student, assess them, and make the appropriate adjustments and plans for them as needed with your progression. And then finally, your progression chart should be assisting you with mastery. So every child should have a copy of this in your record, not for them to look at. They're not going to be following it. That would maybe a little daunting. But every child in whatever folder or binder you keep for their record keeping should have a copy of this. And you would, as you go through, some people just like to use a highlighter and go through them, or write notes or date when that particular lesson or concept was finished, when or maybe when the date of when you completed a particular level, check it off. When a student with me completes a particular level in OG, I like to have a little celebration with them and reward them a little bit for completing that. Maybe give them a little certificate or something like that. So, but this should assist you and guide you with not only your lesson planning, but also with helping to see how are they working towards mastery with you. So I really hope that helps to really clear up any possible misconceptions or confusing things about progression charts, and really think about the difference between it and a scope and sequence. Um, really want to stress once again that there's no universal progression chart that everybody in the OG world follows, right? There may not be one perfect progression chart, but the one that you may be using in front of your student may be beneficial for them. If you need a copy of a suggested order or a progression chart, I will put the link and you can subscribe, and I will send you a copy of the progression that I follow. And that is one that I stick to closely for the resources in my store. So if you were to look at it, then you can see I follow pretty closely to that. There may be a little bit of variation, but it's very similar. So, but once again, let me know if you have any questions. And thank you so much for watching today. And I will